Is there any other new business or announcements? Please make sure to read the dates, mark your calendars for all the upcoming events. There being no further business or announcements, the February 2019 General Membership Business Meeting of the NAWIC Footwear Chapter is now adjourned at 7:14 p.m. And we'll move right on to our speaker. All right. Elizabeth Lyons is a three-time author on the subject of leadership and career management. Elizabeth has developed leadership and career courses, webinars, and even a radio show entitled Leadership Lessons from the Lioness, featured on Plaid for Women, which specifically addresses women's confusion around office politics, negotiations, and even how to deal with being passed over for a promotion. For many women, work is a maze without much direction, and for the driven, career-minded women, the office can be a source of confusion and pain. Elizabeth's talks help a woman to master her thoughts, outlook, and herself so she can navigate her career with confidence and grace. Elizabeth has successfully helped clients remove poor reviews from their employment records by turning around behavior, helped women get noticed for the promotion, and partnered with seasoned leaders to enable their staff to reach new heights. In 2017, Elizabeth released her third book, Hear Us Roar, Unapologetic Women Leading in Corporate America. An expert advisor on career conundrums, Elizabeth has been quoted in Yahoo, The Ladders, and Dice Job Boards. Her words have reached as far as the front page of the Philadelphia Tribune, PBS, CBS Money Watch, Dale Carnegie, and John Tesh's blog. In 2014, she took her leadership courses to Dubai and the Middle East. In 2018, Elizabeth became an affiliate of WITI and WNET as a writer, speaker, and thought leader. Additionally, she has been a keynote speaker for IEEE, Women of Photons, Society of Women Engineers, and Women of Long Island Tech. Today, Elizabeth can be found writing, coaching, and collaborating with the who's who of the corporate America. When she isn't working, Elizabeth can be found traveling across state lines with her husband on their Harley Davidson or in the yoga studio twisting for hours on end. Please welcome Elizabeth Lyons.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here tonight, guys. Okay, so the fork was so I don't travel too far. And I was like, where's my fork back? You're very efficient, but I need my fork back. All right, you tell me again. You're good. Here? Okay, now we can see everything. Great, so thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. The other one roll in. Perfect. How is everybody? Yeah, good. I'm excited to be here. I was in Dallas in November. Was anybody in the Dallas meeting, and did you see this? I know. Anybody else? Can you be just a little louder? Yep, I can be very loud. It would be amazing how loud I can be. Can you hear me in the back okay? All right, I'm going to project that. Tracy was kind enough to kind of hook me in to this chapter, so I'm really excited to be here. Many years ago, I actually was a woman in construction. And I ran all the money and all the books, and that's what I did. And I got a real good foundation in accounting and finance and basically just office work. So I feel like I already know something about you. I feel a sisterhood here is really amazing just to watch. So today I'm gonna roll through my material, but then at the end I really like it to be collaborative. You know, I don't need to be up here yapping. I think this is a good place to really connect and to talk about work and kind of see what's going on with you guys. And see if this feels like what goes on with your own day-to-day. So, what is the Boys Club to you? When you think about the Boys Club, what does that mean? And you can be on time, it's okay. Exclusion. It's exclusion, right? It's favorite. Ooh, it's favoritism. Yeah, here we go. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. What else is it? Exclusion. So Urban Dictionary actually says The boys club is a group of men that when together act like boys, joking and goofing around with each other. That's the first definition. The second definition is a term for a club that only allows men in their group, often used as a way to get away from their wives and their girlfriends, so they can hang out with like-minded individuals. Does that sound like work some days? A little bit, like what goes on kind of at work a little bit. So I wrote this presentation because I think it's important to know how to get in this club and why it's important. It's important that we join the men. It's important that we are part of this because let me tell you, as a woman, particularly in your industry, if you're not in, you're out, and that's a problem. Because if you want to be promoted, if you want to be recognized for the right reasons, the bottom line is we're in their playground, and we'll talk about that tonight. This is a little slide about my work. As we went over, I'm a couple of time author. I've got, actually the fourth book is actually starting to roll around in my head right now, which is really interesting. I think that's gonna, it might even be written this year. We'll see how that goes. And I'm well known in the press. And then I have a coaching practice. So I coach women that are in male-dominated fields. I help them to get promotions. I help them to get recognized. I have clients that come to me for terrible reasons, like they had something horrid written in their review, and they're about to lose their job. And I can actually turn it around for them usually within 60 days. My recent client, I actually gave her back 10 hours a week at work, which was tremendous for her within, I think, the second session. I actually found her that kind of time back. So it's really fun. I really enjoy what I do. And then I also coach executives that are in job seeking. So that's the bulk of my practice. So this is it, right? And I strongly believe in this. Strongly do I believe in this. If you are lucky enough to be at the top, it's your responsibility to send that elevator back down. And the reason I love being here tonight is I see that. I see that here. I see women working together well, collaborating, making things happen. And then we all know that sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes it's difficult to work with other women. Sometimes it's a tough place. But I strongly believe in this foundation. And then the second piece I really want to go over is my message, right? What is all this about? And ironically, the message was birthed probably 2 or 3 months ago. I had an editor from WITI, which is Women in Technology. It's a huge group. It's an international group. It's been around for, I think, 30 years. It's very well known. And it's all women in technology that come together. Any skill set, as long as they're in IT, they could be executive, they may be not, but they all get together. And they're all over the country and also internationally. But anyway, they did a review on my book. And it was interesting when I read the review, and I'm not picky. I actually don't edit things because I believe people's opinions are their opinions, and people's perception of me is their perception of me. So I'm not here to edit that. But when she wrote the review, it gave me a chance to go, no, this is what I really am about. This is why I do what I do. And so the bottom line, what I boil down my work is 2 things. Number 1 is it's important that women, as women, we take responsibility for our careers and that we have unity with our male coworkers and our male superiors. Number 1. So all of this division, thinking that men will let us get ahead and there's no room at the table, and all of this disparaging that, frankly, the press wants to keep us at odds because it's an interesting story, really has no place. Because how do you really think you're going to get there? I mean, how stupid is that? Why would you not join the men? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So number 1 is how do we get along with them and figure it out? Not how do we tear them apart and ruin their careers and make a mess of things. It's already messy out there. We don't need to add to the problem, particularly if we're in a male-dominated area. The second thing that I really believe in is that we have got to, as women, we have got to identify, coach, and promote other women. It goes back to the elevator. You can be highly instrumental where you're at right now in helping another woman get to where she wants to be. You do not have to have a position of power. I think that's like this notion, like I'm not a manager, I'm not a vice president, I'm not this, I'm not that. You'd be surprised how you could just politically support someone quietly, that's a woman, and help to elevate her. You'd be surprised how that little bit can help her get recognized in all the right ways. And we don't do it. We don't do it with each other. And I just, for the life of me, I don't know why. If you see another woman out there and she makes your own jealousy or your own stuff come up, rather than ignoring her or rebuking her or being unkind to her in some way, because frankly, she's younger, she's prettier, she's smarter, she might end up being your boss. Instead of having all of your own emotions come up, sit with those emotions rather than take a piece out of her. We don't do it. I don't understand why. We have no right to complain about not being in power, about not being CEOs. We have no right to complain about disparity in wage if we don't help each other. Why would we not help each other? Why would we not join the men? Why would we not help each other? Truly, it's like common sense for the life of me. So this is what I'm about. And this is not very popular. And I'm okay with that. Some will, some won't, so what? So let's dive in. Are you ready? Here we go. I've set the tone. We all know the tone, right? We all know the tone. Excuse me 1 minute. I have one other thing to set the tone. To really, really hammer this through. I am reminded of a verse from Krishnanath who says, "In the world one becomes one's own enemy and begins to treat everyone else with hostility. Because of your own perversity, you begin to look upon everyone else perversely. And you project your own faults onto those people, and as a result, you see everyone else's faults, even in those that have none. You begin to see impurities, even in those who are really pure. Whatever a man does for or against another, he really does to himself." I am reminded of a story of a palace of mirrors as told by Swami Rama. A large, violent, and brutal dog got into the palace somehow, and the palace was full of mirrors. He shouldn't have been allowed to go in, but somehow the dog did. He was surrounded by mirrors on all sides. He ran in one direction, he saw many dogs running at him, and then he ran in another direction, and he saw more dogs running at him, and then he ran a different direction, and he found just as many dogs running at him in the same direction. He ran a third, and he saw the same thing. He looked up, he looked down, he looked all over, and all these dogs were running at him barking, and it frightened him. It frightened him badly. He stopped running, and he started to wonder how he could save himself. And he began to bark in sheer terror, and he barked, and he barked, and he found thousands and thousands of dogs barking at him from all sides, and this enraged him. It made him so angry, and he began to jump up and down, and the thousands of dogs were jumping up and down, and then he kept jumping up and down in retaliation, and finally, he collapsed. When the watchman found the corpse, he threw it outside the palace. This is exactly the condition of the world. This is exactly the condition of our world. Don't be the barking dog. You're all so much smarter than that. Now we've set the tone. We're not going to be barking dogs. We're going to get along with the men. We're going to figure it out. And let me tell you, they're not that hard to figure out. So this is it. It's what it is. And maybe the slide makes you angry, and maybe the slide makes you recoil, and maybe the slide makes you uncomfortable, but the bottom line is, this is what it is. So why not figure it out? Why not get around it? So here's a study that's frankly disappointing and shocking. 2014, Harvard Business Review came out with a report that surveyed 7,000 people at the executive level, vice president level. And they did this 360 feedback, and they asked them, when you both sit in meetings, males and females, they divided them out, vice president level, what do you think of each other, what goes on in these meetings? And men said, these were our faults. let that sink in for a minute. Now remember, we're not going to be the barking dogs. They said we need to be concise and to the point. They said that we react poorly to criticism. So think about your last review. Think about the last tough conversation that you had. If you had an emotional response back to them, this is what they took away with it. They think that we speak, they'd like us to speak a little more informally and a little less prepared. We're over-prepared when we go into some of these meetings at the vice president level. They talk about emotional and we get defensive. And I have to say, you surveyed all those people, maybe there's a grain of truth in that, whether we like it or not. This is our perception. This is not who we are. This is not stamped in stone and we can't change it. This is our perception, right? So if this is our perception, let me show you what we said about them. We said, when we ask for feedback, you won't give it to us. Well, they already told us that we talk too much and they're scared of us. Do you see what I'm saying? So we ask for feedback, we ask for the promotion, we say, okay, you didn't give me the promotion, well then what do I need to do to get there? They're not gonna tell us.
Certainly not make it easy.
And they're not making it easy. But do you see the big disconnect? So we'll say to them, well, we're not emotional, we're passionate. We're just trying to get something through to you. We're trying to get your attention. They're like, well, you're emotionally blown and I don't like it at all. That's interesting. You know, we obsess over a meeting for days. Let me tell you, do you obsess over a meeting for days? Like I used to go to bed and I would replay, yes, see, you're my friend, you know exactly what I mean. I would replay, do you replay like everything they said and the look on their face, and do you do that?
What could you have said differently?
Oh, what could you have said differently? Darn it, I missed my moment, I should have said it differently. Anybody else stay awake at night thinking about the meeting? I do that for years until I had to give it up. I had to stop doing that. It was so neurotic and it was so, you're laying in bed and your stomach hurts. It's just a terrible thing. But let me tell you, men don't do that, which really is crazy to me. They don't, you know, we're worried about something. We're worried about a conversation. We're worried about something. They're moved on. That's not what we do, right? We obsess over things. We feel like when we go to these meetings, we're outnumbered by the table. I mean, honestly, how many big meetings do you see, big planning meetings, big budget meetings in construction where you see a bunch of women in there? So you're the only at the table, right? The only, right? So this was the disparaging. And I think it's worth pointing that out. This is what they think about us. Right, wrong, and different, this is what they think. And this is what we say. Well, this is where we're at. So, you know, did that surprise you?
No,
Not at all. So what do you think they think about you?
nothing.
I don't care.
I like that. I don't care. Okay, why don't you care? I think you care about your job. I think you probably care about doing a good job, but why don't you care?
Because I do a good job.
Because you do a good job.
But I don't care what.
And at the end of the day, you've got to live with you. Okay.
I just want to be right.
Ooh, there's a good one. Okay, they just want to be right.
No, if they're wrong, they're still right, and they're going to make sure that everybody knows that they're right.
Yep. What else? What do you think they think about you? So if I had to rephrase that, do you think they think you're wrong?
I think they don't think you know enough about the field.
Oh, here it is, right there in the room. I think you're absolutely right.
I think they think nothing of it.
I think they think nothing of you.
There's certain elements.
Like dismissive?
Yes.
Dismissive. And that I'm not educated, I'm just the girl in the office, right?
Not knowledgeable.
Not knowledgeable, right? I was in one meeting, it was, again, a male-dominated kind of situation. It was Convergent, was actually the company, and it was a group like this, and they said, hey, first, before you get really going on this, we have a serious question. I said, yeah, what is that? You know, we go to this meeting, and then, because I'm a female in the office, they'll turn to me and say, well, can you scribe? I don't know if you guys get, can you scribe the meeting? Can you do this, that? But I was like, wow, This is like 1965 or something. Wow. And they go, well, how do you handle that? I said, well, I would show them there's a dictation app on their phone. I would download the app, and they could stick that on the table and have that thing scribe themselves. You know, because it's about diminishing you, right? It goes back to your point. If you don't believe I'm knowledgeable, how do I show you that? Right? These are the gripes tonight, right? But I think we can come out of this room and solve some of it, or at least have a different approach, right? At least have a different mindset. It's worth doing that. So if they think that way, then you've got to go, well, what does it take for me to become credible and knowledgeable to you? It's worth thinking about. I don't know if there's answers, but there might even be a point you directly say it. What does it take for you to see me as more than just the backup singer in the support role? I've been in this industry X number of years. You know, where are you coming from? Do you know about this? Do you know about the meeting before the meeting?
The one after the meeting.
You know about the one after the meeting? Yeah. You know about this? Okay. Are you invited? Yeah. What do you say?
I said, yeah, I do. I just got invited to.
Oh, is that right? You got invited to the meeting for the meeting. All right. That's important, guys. I hate to say it. This is our win. Our wins are small. As long as the wins are small and consistent, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get into unity. We're gonna get out of barking dog syndrome. We're gonna get noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. I think a lot. I work a lot. A lot of guys work for me, and I think how I earn the best respect out of them is I get out there and I hustle with them. Even though I am the owner of the company, I still pick up trash at a job. I'll still call them. I'll still address. You know, I'm a roofing contractor, so I'll still address the things that need to be done. And they know I'm going to go around the house and I'm going to come back and it better be done. If it's not, they're like, oh, show me how it's done. They have learned to ask. Show me the right way.
Okay. So that's an approach. That's definitely an approach.
I just jump in.
No, I think that's great. I think to be invited to the meeting before the meeting is critical. I had it happen to me many, many years ago. It was really funny because I had this huge upper hand and I had no idea. I just picked up my phone, it was the afternoon, it was an engineering manager, and it was, to me, a very bizarre call. And he said, hey Elizabeth, that meeting tomorrow, I'm gonna be on that call too. What's your position on that? I thought that was the weirdest question. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you're going to be in that meeting, and we've got to kind of report our findings. And I said, well, I still didn't get what's happening here. Well, the data is the data, right? I have to present that. And the data doesn't look very nice towards you. But I would explain the story behind the data to fill in the gaps. I mean, I would do that. And he goes, oh, okay, that's great. See you tomorrow. And I'm like, the heck was that? That was the meeting before the meeting. Because I could damage him. Or he had the perception that I could damage him. Or he had the perception that I had a big mouth. Or he had the perception that something. And I would never do that. But it took me like years to figure out that was the meeting before the meeting. And I read an article about it in the New York Times years and years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is how they work. This is literally how they work. And then I've been around executive men for the last 6.5 years, and I've seen it. And I've been invited, of course, but I've seen it. I've seen how they gather, and they will compare notes and make sure everybody is on the same page before they walk into that thing. And if they think somebody's against them, they're there to politically win them over. They operate differently. There's a whole thing that they do that we don't even know. So it's worth kind of understanding that goes on. And then over time, if you're not in, you're out, your confidence starts to slip. Or you have a really bad day at work and you think the bad day means it's over. It's not over, it's just a blip. But you can take a real heavy hit to the confidence. And if you do that, then you walk in the next day, now you're trying to recover from this thing. And trust me, they've moved on. They've totally moved on. They're not even thinking about what you're thinking about. Confidence is a funny thing. I had a client come to me years ago and she said, whatever you have, I want some of that. Can you teach me? And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know anything. And she said, you just project such confidence. Were you always like that? And I thought, I mean, truly, I never really had a confidence issue. I've gained a lot of self-awareness, a tremendous amount of self-awareness in the last 8-10 years, which is good to balance out confidence. But I never had a problem there, and I will tell you, I can't teach anyone confidence, and it's not like you can stand next to me and it rubs off on you in some weird way. Confidence is like a tiny, tiny little muscle that gets built over time, and it's built because you begin to trust yourself. It's truly an inward process. It's truly like yoga, it's an inward journey. And what happens is you go to the meeting and you win the meeting and you come out and you're riding that high. And the next day you go in and you feel good because you got the residual of the high. And then you maybe stand up and say, you know, I'll take on that project. I want to be a part of that. You're a little bit bold and you work your way through that and you stumble and you fall. And it's not the stumble and the fall ever. It's the getting up that really matters. You could blow it at work. They'll forgive you. Trust me, because they have a different tribe and a different thing going on. In their world, it's not the end of the world. In our world, it's utter failure and bow beating, and it's just this horrible thing, and we beat ourselves up. But they've moved on. So the confidence is something that lies within you. And it's really important that you're able to develop that over time, because that's what allows you to get identified for the program or the project, identified to do the harder tasks. Or at least it would give you your own inner confidence to stand up and say, hey, I want to be a part of that. It makes you, going back to your point, it kind of makes you believe that you are competent and you have that own self-trust and your own confidence in it, so that when you go to them, if they don't think you're bright enough, you know you're bright enough, right? And so maybe you go out on the ledge a little bit to kind of demonstrate that you're bright enough. That's a fine line too. I was at a conference, I wrote about this in the book. I was at a conference and they'd flown me in, and it was the women of photons actually, which blew me away, because these are women with PhDs. They study photons. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how brainy and smart they are. And I remember asking, why do you want me? Like, you guys are all waste. Like, I couldn't even hold a conversation with you on a scientific level. So why me, right? I'm thrilled, why me? And I was at that conference and there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and he was very anxious and very nervous, and he found the person that was organizing the event came over to me and said, hey Elizabeth, we're gonna have you a half hour and we're gonna have him go like 15 minutes. Well, he had flown over from Australia. And he took this huge offense that his time to speak was going to be cut down. And I didn't know it, and I didn't get it. And so what I did was I was just very, very quiet. And the more quiet and like absorbed in myself that I became, he became very nervous and like he was freaking out over here. And he was verbal about it wasn't fair that his time was being cut down and all this other sort of nonsense. And finally, in this huge huff, he turns to me and he goes, Elizabeth, what do you do? And I completely forgot that he was in academia. And the biggest things in academia are being published in tenure. And I turned around at him and I said, like, I'm a 3-time author. That's why I'm here. That's what I do. And I just smashed it in his face in the worst way. Like that, I'm smarter than you thing? Like, that wasn't it. And I didn't mean to be glib, and I didn't mean to be sharp. I didn't at all. It's just, you know, he asked me and I answered, and but what it meant to him was like, wow. And I may as well struck him over the head with a 2x4. I hurt him so bad. And he settled down, but I really got to him. So there's a fine line with proving being confident, proving your competency, and believe it or not, men can be pretty fragile. There's a few of them, not many, but there's a few of them that, even in construction, fragile. Egos, fragile. So if you bump into that, just be aware of it. You know, maybe, okay, so what if they have to be the smartest person in the room? That doesn't even matter so much. So these are the traits that women unknowingly say in the office that gets them in trouble. And what happens is, you say them and you say them in conversation, and they become a habit, and you keep saying them, and then all of a sudden this perception is formed about you, and then there you are. Now you're the girl in the office. You're not somebody that's a project engineer and running millions of dollars in a budget. And they're very, very subtle, and it happens over time. So things like saying, I'm sorry, unless you hit someone's car, and I mean hard, you're not sorry. Have you ever seen a man stand up and be like, I'm really sorry we missed the deadline, I'm really sorry we didn't make the stocks earning? Does Trump say he's sorry? Why on earth would you say you're sorry? Oh, I can see your faces, you're like, yeah, why am I sorry? You don't need to be sorry, you're not 4 years old. So if that's in your repertoire, get rid of that, particularly in a male-dominated audience, because let me tell you something, they deem you as weak. If you're sorry, you're weak. You want to at least be able to be on par with them. Minimally, it's not hard. It's really not hard. Be very definitive in your language. Very definitive, very decisive. Things are on, off, they're right, wrong, here's the numbers, here's my conclusion, here's my plan, here's my strategy, all great things to be saying daily in your meetings, in your emails, in one-on-one conversations. That's powerful language. That says, I'm not the girl in the office. You know, it's a fine line, right? My husband calls it the chick in charge. And there's a point where like they don't like the chick in charge. They don't like it. Most guys in construction that I personally found, they like a strong woman. They do. They enjoy it. They probably had strong mothers or grandmothers or both. Many, many years ago, I ran a recruiting team, and ironically, they were all men, and there was like 6 of them. And it was so easy for me to work with them, and I couldn't figure out why it was so easy. And so just out of morbid curiosity and my psychology background, one day in the office I said to them, when you grew up, what did your mother do? And it was interesting, all of them had very strong mothers. One guy, his mother was a single mother and his father was in jail. Another guy, his mother was very strong, but he had a very powerful wife who ran a business and was very successful. And he liked her a lot and admired her a lot. The other guy, his mother was very loving, very strong, but very loving to him. So that really gave me an idea of how they saw me. I can see you all thinking about that. That's it, man. How do they see you? What is their lens? We're all in this movie. Like, it's not even our perception, it's our judgment. You know, we look out at somebody and we think, we sum them up. We just sum them up. This is where they're coming from. Or we work with them long enough. Even our husbands, our kids, and people you've worked with for years, you sum them up. You're like, oh, they're in this box, this is what they do. And when you let some of that go, you'd be amazed, because when you really ask them where they came from, you begin to at least see a glimmer of what their perception is of you. I couldn't figure out why it was so easy, and then I realized there's so many strong women that stood behind me that when I gave them direction, they knew I wasn't fooling around, and they listened and they respected me. And by the same token, when they really had a bad day, they could always come in my office. Now that's hard, because there's a point where somebody's griping and complaining, and you need to be empathetic and listen, and there's a point where it's just a bitch session, and you just need to be like, you have to go back to work. I'm the boss, and you need to go back to work. And it's a fine line when you're leading men or when you're around men. Where's that point where you're empathetic, and you're listening, and you're being, you know, you're trying to connect, and now they see a weak spot. You know what I mean? They see the weak spot. Oh, at the end of the day, she's still a woman. She's still got a big heart. I'll manipulate that. It's a fine line. I've seen it. I've been on the other end of it. It's not an easy thing. So interestingly enough, I was trying to figure out why do women say the things they do in the office? Why are they not fairly paid? Why are we at 2019 talking about any of this. It's so ridiculous. It's like, really, this is as far as we got, and we're still holding the conversation. Now we're not even holding this conversation, now we're screaming. And what I realized was, I'll get to it at the end. What I realized was, a lot of it we do to ourselves in our minds. A lot of it isn't really even there. It's our own doubt, our own fear around our careers, our own insecurities. And then what happens is that becomes our movie. It becomes what you think about is what you bring about. You see and feel all of that, and it reflects your entire life. People you meet, don't meet, what happens at work, what doesn't happen at work, the relationships, all of it. You project onto it, and what happens is it's like behind me. It's like a big movie screen. But there's a way around that, and the way around that is really self-mastery around the thoughts. The biggest thing my teacher ever taught me 8 years ago that changed my life is that I wasn't the thought. So we're so much in our thoughts, we identify with the thought. So I'll give some examples. You know, I am angry right now at work. I am sad. I am disappointed. I am female. I am this. I am that. All of that labeling and the thoughts, the self-talk that goes on in your head. The biggest thing he ever told me was I wasn't my thoughts. He said, you can never stop the thoughts. Not the day you die, then the thoughts stop. This whole trying to stop the thoughts, forget it. You're not going to stop the thoughts. But you can make friends with your mind. You could befriend it, and you could eventually sever so far apart from the thought, from who you think you are, which is ridiculous, frankly, who you think you are in your identity. You could get so far away from that when situations happen in front of you, you would just be witnessing. It's proven. It's in quantum physics. It's Sponda theory. I mean, it's a thing. It's real. It's not woo-woo. You can do it. And I decided 8 years ago I wasn't going to bed anymore thinking about the meeting. That's how it started for me. Like, I can't live in this space anymore. Like, I can't do it. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm so unpeaceful. I don't want to do it. And so it starts with discipline over the mind. First thing is the thought comes in and you even identify you have a thought. That is the hardest thing, because whatever goes on up here, it's your own movie, it's your own tape. The hardest thing is to identify you're even having a thought. Then you can sit back and look at it and be like, oh, is that true? You know what I found out? 99.9999999% of everything goes on in my mind is garbage. Oh, I wrote 3 books. Total ego and illusion. Oh, I'm an utter failure. Total ego and illusion. I am this, I am that. Really? Oh, I don't like her. Really? Do you even know her, Elizabeth? I constantly see what's going on in my mind, and I don't buy into it. I just, oh, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. I don't even give it much emotion, because you could start, if you do this long enough, you start to judge yourself. Oh, I'm a terrible person, I should not. Why did I think that about that woman? That is a terrible thing, I shouldn't think that. And then all this self-loathing comes up. You don't even self-loathe. You just go, huh, that's interesting. So when I was really mastering some of this, and I was really into it 8 years ago, I realized there were certain people at work that drove me crazy. Do you know the ones at work? You're smiling, you know the one, right? Yeah. Just throw it out there if you would. What is it about them? Or she's sitting on right now. What's that?
Go to somebody else.
Think about that person at work that drives you crazy. We all have one. They're so special. They say one thing and do another. Just makes you so irritated. Yep.
They don't know when to shut.
They don't know when to shut their mouths. There we go.
They don't know when to say no.
Oh, don't know when to say no. They take everything on, nothing gets done. I I guess the last part, but
Negative.
negative. Just a Debbie Downer dude. What else? Person drives you nuts at work. Nothing? What?
Late, tardy, there's a list goes on.
There's a list. Okay, so all right, you guys, whether you're sharing or not, you got the list. You with me with the list? Okay. Now I want you to imagine. Tomorrow you go in, you walk right up to them. They may not even like you. They may know you don't like them. You walk right up to them and be like, hey, you want to go to lunch? I'm buying. Can you imagine doing that? I did it for 2 years. So that every time I sat across from them, I get pissed off. Because I wanted to sit and really see what was going on in my mind. And they were my biggest teachers. It was fabulous. I'd sit across and I'd be like, you are so stupid. And they would say something and I'd be like, and you're dumber when you speak. And I'd be eating, and it would just get louder and louder and louder like a megaphone in my head about my distaste for this person. And then I would say, Elizabeth, look at this. Why is that? And so the mind would go, oh, because they're stupid and they don't know what we're talking about and they're negative and they're this and they're that. And I would label them and I would be like, that's really interesting. Do you know anything about them really? And I would challenge the thought. And eventually that thought got quieter. I mean, I went to a lot of lunches with people I really disliked. It was the best therapy I ever did because I got to see what was going on in me. Do you see what I'm saying? I got to see what was going on in me. Because at the end of every single lunch that I did that with, what I found was everything I thought about them wasn't true. It wasn't true at all. Some of them were really nice people. Some of them told me about personal things because they thought I was listening and I was judging them. You know what I mean? So I mean, it was just a huge lesson. So that is one way to really kind of look at the mind and master the mind. And these are some of the damaging thoughts that we do to ourselves as women in the workplace. We will think, oh, there's no room at the table, there's no place for me, my boss won't recognize me. You know what, I don't need a pay raise, I trust I'm paid fairly. Call me. Don't ever believe you're paid fairly. Understand what the market will bear for your wage. Don't ever think that, because in the end of the day, that's not what's going on. Many women I've worked with, I get to, so I have an 8-week program, I get to like 3rd session, and finally I can't stand it anymore, and I'll say, you know you're $20,000 underpaid. And they'll be like, what? Well, that can't be. How do you know that? I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? You're the only one in a 5-mile radius that doesn't know. Like, you're the only one that doesn't know. If I coach a man, a male executive, first session in, 20 minutes in the conversation, I can time it now. He leans over and he goes, how much can I get, Elizabeth? You know the market. Can I get another 25 grand on the base? What do you think it's worth? Should I push for a bigger bonus? I've been doing this work 17 years. It's the same conversation, male and female clients, consistently. We do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves. So what do you think if you were to leave here tonight, drive home, reflect on it, maybe tomorrow morning, noodle it over again, what would you do different? What would you change? What would you look at? Do you want to change? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is how much change are we really willing to do?
The diminishing prices are a hard habit to break.
Say that again?
The diminishing prices are a very hard habit to break.
Yeah, so I've given this speech many, many, many times, and I had one group call me later and said, we literally started a group in the office with your book, and we talked about the diminishing prices, and we're all taking them out of our email. Like, that had maximum impact for people. They didn't realize what they said. So, to recap, getting invited to the Boys Club is important. You don't want to be the barking dog. If you're not in, you're out. Think about what you say. When you say it, look at the look on their face. If you're going to replay anything, replay the look on their face when you said it and ask yourself, did they get it? Am I connecting? Was I too hard? Was I too soft? How do they see me? Now, that's not to make you neurotic in your mind, but it's to at least have you broaden. There's somebody else on the outside there, and they have thoughts about you. And if you can bridge those thoughts and cut down on some of the diminishing phrases, all of a sudden, you begin to elevate. These are great things to say at work. So I told you what not to say. This is what you want to say. Try these tomorrow. Take one that you like, one that sounds like you. I guarantee you could get in a meeting or into an email. I have a plan, I have a strategy, I have a solution. And the most important that you could ever put in any email. And when a client comes to me and says, I'm about to get fired, I was just written up, something bad, one of my performance review, I've been here 10 years and I'm reeling. The number one thing I tell them is, look at your emails and how many times did you say I and you? And for the next week, every email that you write, it's us, we, team. Men understand this. We do not. When we were little girls, particularly in America, I'll go out on a limb here, our value was due to more towards how we looked over how smart we were. Now, in Asian countries, in India and Asian countries, how smart they are has a bigger value than how they look. And we're taught this from a young age, and I go over that in my book, and it's really interesting. If you asked a little boy and a little girl at 8 years old, do you want to be president of the United States? Both of them equally will say yes. And if you ask them just 2 years later, the little girl says no. And part of that is all the images that we see over and over and over again, and the book talks about that, thousands of images that we see that tells us who we should be and how we should act and so forth. And so that goes on in our mind. And so we think we get our value as women from that. And that's problematic. Men, on the other hand, when they're little boys, they typically do one of two things, particularly when I was growing up. They either worked on cars with their brothers and their fathers, right? Or they were in team sports. Now, years later, when the internet and computers came in the 80s, if they were total geeks and they weren't good at either one, then they hung out, on computers and they built computers and they did all kinds of stuff. But men generally understand team. Even if they're playing a video game, they understand there's somebody on the other end and we're in a team. Women don't understand team. Women understand competition. We understand that we are vying the other woman for the job, the mate, the whatever. It's always attached to something. We don't believe that we are our own units, that we have everything that we need within ourselves. We think the man is the plan, something else is going to get us there. We're latchers on or more than we are independent. Men understand team. Men understand the most powerful person on the football team. They understand that, and they all get along just fine. When I led the team of men, I had this all-star, and I was terrified that I was giving too much attention to the all-star. And I went home and I said to my husband, I'm worried that they're going to think I favor so-and-so, and I don't. It just so happens like he's just better. He's just better. And he looked at me with a straight face and he said, Elizabeth, men don't operate like that, so it's not a problem. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, in an office, one of you has to be smarter, prettier, better, faster, whatever it is. Women just don't do it well often with other women, but us as guys, we don't care if he's the biggest player on the football field because we understand our own value. We know he doesn't get to throw the ball without us blocking for him or he's going to get creamed. And I never forgot it. And he was right. But what I did was, to be fair, I made sure the other men on the team, that I let them know I knew their value, right? He was still my all-star. He's still gonna do what he does, but I let the other people know they were equally important on the team. And that's a drastically different view for a woman. It's just not where we come from, it's not where we're taught, it's certainly not the images that we see every day, all day long. So if you go in tomorrow and in your emails you're saying us, we, team, and you do it for a week, I guarantee you your perception changes. Guarantee you. They will not see you the same way. These are the links of the study that I pulled, which is pretty shocking. And then that's the book. And then my practice is Liontology. Questions? Thoughts? It's a lot, isn't it?
Their heads right now.
What's that?
I said their thoughts are in their heads right
There,
now.
you're thinking. Oh, okay, so I like this. I like it. I want to be clever, but go ahead.
So it's really interesting, and we're kind of having some discussions back here. You know, I got a degree in 1983 in construction, and so I've kind of added it. You can tell how old I am.
Yeah, but that's a school of hard knocks. That's what I see.
You know, and there are a couple of things that I have learned. Number one is, if you end a sentence by calling me a bitch, I've made my point.
There you go.
If you think you're going to hurt my feelings, you're not going to, because I left them in my dresser drawer.
Well done.
I don't bring my feelings to work.
Right, well done.
I don't care. And it's really interesting, you know, with the women now that are starting to look at running for office. And it just pisses me off, excuse my, you know. But the first thing they say about this woman is she likable? I do not care if you like me.
Yeah.
I don't care if I am likable. You know, have you heard what I've said, and are you doing what I've told you to do? And if you like me, that's okay. If not, you know, I'm not here to be likable.
Yep.
I'm here to do my job.
Yep.
And you know, I can't tell you how many times I get called yes sir. You know, we were laughing back here. You know, it's there's nothing about me I want to change right now, because
that's your approach, but it works.
Yeah,
but I'm doing is that works. My approach when I very first took on my team was similar. And one day, and looking back, I probably didn't need to say this, but one day I literally stood in front of the team and I said, make no mistake about it, I'm not your friend, and I don't need to be your friend, and I'm not inviting you to Thanksgiving dinner. So, at the end of the day, you know, you don't like it, you walk around the block, man, come back, walk it off. I was the same way. I didn't have to be liked. What was critically important to me when I started was that I was respected.
right.
Right?
Absolutely. And that is something that with the years I've been in this business and what I've done is I've earned that respect.
Yep.
But it's really hard for younger women, and for me when I was younger, to really get over the wanting to be liked.
The liked, yeah.
And then now, like I said, if you don't like me, I don't care.
Yeah.
Are you going to do what we need to do to get the job done?
Yeah, that's an approach. You know, I've said to other women, I'll get there in a minute, I've said to other women, you know, your feelings have no business at work. You can cry, get nervous, throw up in the bathroom before the meeting, call your mother, call your husband, talk to your cat if you live alone. Any of those things are fine, but it is no place in the office, because if you bring it there, and you're all shaking your heads, a lot of you are, particularly the senior women in here, the veteran women like myself, they're like, oh man, you go crying, it's over. It's over. You are damaged and diminished, for sure. So there's just no place for that. You can have those feelings, you just have to understand, you know, where you turn them on and off. Now, going back to your point, I was that strong woman, and what I had to do to be really effective, I had to round out some of that strength, right? I had to learn how to be empathetic. I had to visually see when somebody was having a bad day and have empathy, and it's very painful. It's like growing a soul. It's very painful. If you're a businesswoman and you really don't care what people think, and you came into the world that way, that was like the critical growing that I had to do. And there was one day, I do want to tell this story, there was one day where that happened, and I've had women ask me, my coaching client a couple weeks ago, she goes, how do you know when you got this thing going on? How do you know when it's right? How do you know when you hit that balance, right? You're tough, you're respected, but you have a good heart, right? You're not trying to trample on. How do you know when you've got it? Like, men don't go through this like we do, and we're looked at different because we are women, so it's worth consideration. And there's this one day many years ago where the telephone rang in my office, and there's a young woman on the other end, and she said, hi, my name is so-and-so, and are you the daughter of so-and-so? And I said, yes, I am. And she said, your father is dying, and I'm calling from hospice. And I went, okay. And that's exactly what I did. I said, okay. And she said, do you know what that means? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, he's been asking for you for over a year. Your stepmother wouldn't release your contact information. I've looked for you through 3 states, every place I could look. And she started to cry. She said, will you come? And then she said, you are your father's dying wish. And I said, of course I'll come. And I'm sure you know some story. I haven't spoken to my father in 7 years. And she said, yep. And I said, so honey, I don't know what they told you about me or whatever, but I will be there. I will be there on a plane. As soon as I hung up the phone, I thought, oh my God, I gotta go I'm at work. And I wasn't crying or anything. I was in, you women all understand that I was in executive, I gotta execute mode. I was like, father's dying, got it, click. Okay, now I gotta figure this stuff out, right? That's where I was at. That's just how I process stuff. So I pull it together, I call my boss. He's had 5 kids. I say to him, I got this phone call, I need to go. Absolutely, Elizabeth, absolutely. He said, this is a crazy question. This is really strange me asking you this, but you have 5 kids. If they were your dying wish, I mean, as a kid, what do you want as the father? If I show up and I haven't seen him in 7 years, what does he want / need from me? And he said to me on the phone, nothing but you showing up. That's all he really wants. Just go be you, and you'll be great. And I thought, well, I don't even know how to do that, but okay. So meanwhile, Steve, God bless Steve, he's calling flights, he's trying to get me booked, and he's like, there's one going out 2 days, and and he's arranging all of it. And finally, I just said, I can't, just whatever, just book it, and I'm just gonna go. And he's like, okay, so he's running around doing that. I was still fine, I wasn't crying, I was really, really fine, and so the hardest part was going down to the team. And I went down to the team and I sat them all down, and when I walked in, they were all like kind of in a bullpen. They all have separate cubes, so they're all in one area, and I walk in, I go, come on guys, and they all scooched over in their chairs, and I said, hey, I got this phone call, and it was from hospice, and my father's dying. And I haven't seen my father in 7 years, and the last time I saw him was a bit of a blowout, and I left his house, and he's never called me or spoken to me since. So I have to go. But here's what I expect from you. I expect you to be your very best. And furthermore, I expect to get no phone calls and no emails, because I will not be looking at email. I will definitely not be taking phone calls, because what I'm gonna go do for 3 days is my father's dying. And Chris, you're gonna be the point person. And if there's any problems, you go to him, and then we'll sort it out. But that's what I gotta go do. And one of them had a terrible look on his face, terrible. And I thought, oh God, now he's worried. Because what happened was I had projected such the strong leader, such the bulletproof leader, that one of the gentlemen that was tender-hearted actually, very introverted, he was terrified that I was in pain and that I couldn't lead. And if I couldn't lead and be bulletproof and charge forward and help them, I knew he feared, like, oh God, the whole world's falling apart, this is happening. So that was problematic. So I squashed that as good as I could, and I got out of there. So when I came back 4 days later, it was a great visit. It was very memorable. I'm very thankful because I got that time with my dad, and I'm just grateful. It was a gift because now I get to live my life knowing I showed up and knowing that I did not look at a text message. I did not look at one email. I did not pick up one phone call. I just let it go. I figured I trained them enough, they knew what to do, and I had to go. I had to be present. Somebody was gonna die, maybe in front of me, I had to be present. So that's what I did. So I come back, I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? They go, oh, it was fine, everything's fine. And I gotta tell you, I didn't believe them. I didn't believe them. So I walked in the other department, I was like, hey, do you hear anything about my team? Do you know anything about that? And they were like, no, everything's fine. I went in 2 other departments, hey, do you hear anything about my team? No, everything was fine. So I was like, wow, that's when I knew I had something. But the end of the story was really beautiful because at the end of the story, I walked back down to my office, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I'll go down to my office, and here comes my all-star player, right? He comes down, he comes into the office, and he says, hey, Elizabeth? I go, yeah, what's up? Come on in. He comes in, he goes, hey, I want you to know, the guys and I, we got together, and we were really talking about this, and I'm very sorry about your father. He said, yeah, no, it's okay. He goes, we all sit around, and we talked, and we were gonna buy flowers, and then we were gonna buy a card, and so I stepped in, and I said, this is a very private moment for you, and under no circumstances would you want flowers or a card. And I said, wow, Chris, thank you. He goes, yeah, you bet. I said, all right, well, I'll catch up with you later. He said, okay. And I closed my office door, and I burst into tears for 15 minutes, because I have never felt so loved as a leader. I have never felt so understood. I have never felt so respected. I have never felt so loved by a team in my life, because they gave it to me. They gave it to me. God bless them all. So leadership is really tough. I did the best I could in the book. I talked about my own blunders. I talked about all sorts of stuff, and some of it will work and some of it won't. But it's a tough thing as a leader, especially as a woman. But it can be done, and it can be done beautifully. And trust me, we're bumping around trying to figure it out, so is everybody else. Really, nobody has this thing down. Thank you for tonight.